Okay, well, I'll get started then. I'm sure people will continue to join as I speak. Before I introduce myself, I want to introduce my wonderful colleague, Sarah Kinikio, who leads up our admissions process and who knows far more than I do on all kind of admissions related technical questions. But my job today is to tell you a bit about the program, to tell you a bit about the kind of work that we do as a faculty, and we will answer your questions at the end. But I'm just going to give you a sense as to what we do here. And also I'll give you some tips as to what a nice like a really good quality application will look like. So that's the plan for the next hour. So my name is Tom Slater. I'm a professor of urban planning here at Columbia. And I joined Columbia in 2022, and that was after 14 years at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. And 5 years before that, I was at the University of Bristol. So my academic career was in the UK, and then I made the move to the US. My training is in urban geography, so I'm not an urban planner by training, but I think that's a strength, and I'll explain why as we go through. But I do take a very interdisciplinary approach to what I do, and also a community engaged approach. So I learn not just from other academics, but also from the struggles which communities are facing in the context of urban change. I'm probably best known for my work on gentrification and displacement, particularly using and extending the late great Neil Smith's rent gap theory. That might mean something to some people on this call. And on that topic, I've published several books and articles. But over the last decade or so, I've become very interested in the phenomenon of territorial stigmatization, which is how people are discredited, devalued, treated differently because of the places with which they are associated. I also have a very long-standing interest in questions of housing inequality and struggles for housing justice, particularly with respect to all the debates that are going on at the moment about rent control, not just here in New York, but globally. I'm currently writing a book on the history of a municipal housing project in Cape Town, South Africa, where I've done a lot of research in the last few years with a long-time collaborator who once lived in that housing project, which ended up changing dramatically under the apartheid system. And so I've been looking through his eyes and the eyes of people he used to live around to try and understand forced eviction and its consequences over a 50, 60-year period. So that's what I've been doing. It tells you a little bit about the kind of work that I do. And I'll tell you more about the work that my colleagues do in a moment. I'm just going to tell you a little bit now about the program as a whole, the way we do things, and the application process. So that, by the way, that picture there is the building where we're all based, the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation. The bulk of the intellectual activity is architecture, but that doesn't mean it all is, right? There's also urban planning, historic preservation, and urban design and real estate. So we're all in this building, and it's appropriate that it's an architecture school in such a beautiful building. And the campus, I don't know if any of you have ever been to New York and seen Columbia's campus, but it is a very special place. Right, why an urban planning PhD at Columbia University? Well, this is my job for the next 50 minutes is to explain why. And it's quite challenging to condense it, but I'm just going to show you a few things as to why I feel that our program is really quite exciting. So, a dynamic and flexible curriculum connecting knowledge across disciplines. Like I said, I'm trained as an urban geographer. I wasn't trained as an urban planning scholar. That, I think, is a strength. Some of my colleagues, not all, but some of them are all trained in the field of urban planning. But most of us, actually all of us, we take a really interdisciplinary approach to what we do. And I think that is actually one of the unusual and important things about our program. So we are all familiar with different debates going on in different disciplines, and we bring that into an urban planning lens and framework, right? So also you get a chance to pick courses, not just in GSAP, the department, but across the university in your first and second years, and even the third year of the program. So there is scope here to develop really broadly and to expand your horizons, to open your eyes, open your minds to the different ways in which different disciplines approach matters relating to urbanism and urban questions and housing questions, etc. We center social, racial, and climate justice in urban contexts in our program. I think the thing that probably we are most known for as a program over the years and as a faculty is the critical approach that we take. A little bit of history behind this. One of the real giants of urban planning, the late great Peter Marcuse, was at Columbia for 35 years. He was one of my predecessors in the role of program director. Don't know if that name is familiar to you. Hopefully it is. But Peter Marcuse was a critical scholar of urban planning and housing issues. And one of the things he once said, and it stayed with me my whole career, he said that all research today must be critical or it's dishonest. And he said that in 2010. And he was reflecting on the state of the world and the importance of urban planners in making positive interventions and positive changes and recommending things to make lives better in cities. And that's what Peter was all about. And that's the ethos that he built with the program. And the program has carried that on well beyond Peter's retirement and passing. And so all of us now, we like to think that we take forward that critical approach in everything that we do. Also, with the appointment of Anthony Vanke a few years ago, I'll tell you about Anthony in a minute, we developed a specialization in urban science and data analytics, but centering human beings, unlike some data science. So I'll tell you a bit about Anthony's work in a moment. We also have a comparative approach to what we do. We do comparative research of our own, and we bring that into classrooms. We bring that into the advising of our students. And we learn across and between different geographical contexts, global north, global south, and global east. So we're thinking about differences and also similarities in planning systems, planning processes, and issues facing cities today. For example, what can we learn about the situation in the United States if we really take a close look at situations happening in other countries? So if you study very deeply, for example, things happening in Latin America, how could we bring those into understanding and addressing some of the problems in the United States city? Normally, it's the other way around, right? There's a sort of intellectual imperialism where people think that you impose ideas on Southern contexts. But we like to think, well, what can we learn from those contexts to bring into debates in the North and what used to be called the West? So that's another thing that we do, all five of us on the faculty. We like to think we get students ready throughout the 5 years of the program for academic, research, and professional careers. We emphasize professional development. We make sure that students are supported. For example, one of the things that all students have to do in a PhD program is present their work, not just to us as a program, but to conferences, whether they be national or international. I was just advising a student the other day, listening to the draft presentation, making suggestions and giving all kinds of advice as to how that would be more effective, given that sometimes you have like 15 minutes, hardly any time to give a presentation. So that's just an example of how we think we get people ready for the world ahead, the world that lies beyond the PhD, right? So we really try and improve those skills because they're so vital, whatever you decide to do once you've got the PhD. I'll say that the great majority of students who do a PhD with us end up in academic careers, right? Usually in tenure track positions, not always, but that's generally what people end up doing. Right, another reason to consider the urban planning PhD program is not, well, first of all, the GSAP department, the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation, is a thriving intellectual space. And urban questions are at the center of what we all do, not just the urban planners, of course, that's obvious, but also the architects, the historic preservationists. There are always interesting speakers who are coming in to talk to us, and that helps us talk across academic, well, it helps us move out of those disciplinary silos to think about what we can all bring into thinking about urban problems. There's also the wider university. One of the things which I think is quite remarkable about Columbia University, despite all of the things I'm sure all of you have seen on TV over the last 2 years. And of course, there have been very real issues affecting this campus and many others, right? But one of the things I think is so exciting about Columbia is that despite those challenges, it has maintained its intellectual focus. So there is always a fascinating event going on. Pretty much every day of the week, there are several events that you can attend as a member of the Columbia community. I'm often amazed as I walk through the campus and you see things that are advertised and you think, wow, that sounds amazing. I'm going to go this evening, right? And there's just, because it's Columbia, because it's New York City, there's always interesting people in the orbit of the university who come in and speak to us. And that makes it an incredibly exciting intellectual space. Finally, this may have been the motivation for some of you to join this call and maybe even apply. New York City. That's why I came here, right? It wasn't just Columbia, it wasn't just GSAP. This is a totally extraordinary place to be. Not only is it a place where I enjoy walking around and taking things in and being inspired and thinking things through, but it's just the most, just an incredible place to be an urbanist, right? So there's always something interesting going on. You may have seen the elections that we had, the mayoral elections that were, was it last week? It's an exciting time to come to New York right now with that result. And that's another thing to consider. New York City is an enormous, incredible, frustrating, but also thought-provoking place. And I don't regret for 1 second coming here and learning from it. And that actually can feed into the work you do. It's very, very difficult not to be inspired when you're in this remarkable metropolis. Finally, the PhD students themselves, right? So if you're accepted onto our program, you end up with a group of students who are quite astonishing. They are a joy to work with. And of course, I'm biased because I'm the program director and I advise many of them, but they really are a remarkable group of people. They look after each other. They challenge each other. They think about each other. There's an incredible ethic of care and sense of duty to each other to support each other through the program. And some of the most amazing moments of my career have been watching these students grow as scholars. Let me give you an example. This is the next slide. These are the 9 students I'm currently the main advisor for, right? They're all at different stages of the program. Well, they're all beyond year 2. But these are the students that I'm currently advising. And I'm putting this up here. I won't tell you about each of their projects. That would take me all day. But I'm just showing you the kinds of topics that they're working on and where they're doing it, right? And hopefully, just by glancing at that quickly, you'll see the geographical breadth of where we have students working on and the kinds of parts of the world where they're from. So just going through that list: Lebanon, Dominican Republic, Italy, India, Canada, Mexico City, Peru, India again, United States. Right, so it's a very international group of people, right? And these are just 9. These are the 9 that I'm working with. There's about 6 or 7 more across the program. So, and I think all of those are different places to the ones I've just mentioned, right? So there really is an incredible international global vision of this program. And that makes it an incredibly exciting space to be a student, right? So you'll be learning about parts of the world that you've not been to before, and it will open your eyes and it will help you think about the context that you're interested in, right? One of the exciting things is when you have students debating and discussing readings and bringing their own backgrounds and perspectives and thoughts and feelings from their own context into those discussions and listening to each other. So, and learning from each other. So I'm just showing you that slide there just to give you a sense as to how truly broad the geographical focus is of the work that we do here. Right, amazing faculty. Now I'm just going to tell you a bit about the work that my wonderful colleagues do. So let me just give you a quick summary about the 4 colleagues who are not on the call and the kinds of things which they do. These are just photos of their book covers or most recent papers, right? So I've introduced myself already, you know a bit about me, but the next person I want to tell you about is Wei-Ping Wu, who, as well as being faculty on our program, is also the director of our master's program in urban planning. And also Wei-Ping is Columbia's vice provost for academic programs, so a very senior leadership position in the institution itself. Wei-Ping is very well known as a scholar of Chinese urbanism, on which she's published many books. Some of them are pictured here. And specifically, she works on issues of migration and housing and infrastructure in Chinese cities. And her work has helped us understand how the Chinese urban experience has major implications for urban planning and urban theory beyond China. Okay, so that's a quick summary of Wei-Ping's work. Next one to mention is my colleague Hiba Bu Akar. There's her book there on the top left. Hiba's research focuses on planning in conflict and post-conflict cities, the question of urban security and violence, and the role of religious political organizations in the making of cities. Hiba is very well known for that highly regarded book there, For the War Yet to Come, which examines how Beirut's post-Civil War peripheries have been transformed through multiple planning exercises into contested frontiers that are mired in new forms of conflict. And what Hiba does, she contributes to planning scholarship by studying planning practice within a framework of past violence and anticipated violence, very real issues in the region of the world where she works. Anthony Vanke is the next person to mention. Anthony focuses on urban technologies and urban data, using them to examine many different aspects of urban life, centering residents' individual and lived experiences. Now, urban data science, for those of you, some of you may know this already, it tends to emphasize aggregate city-wide patterns and top-down perspectives, but Anthony's rather different than that. What he does is that he uses computational tools such as machine learning, computer vision, and digital data sets to study the behaviors of people and communities. And his work seeks to evolve and adapt these technologies to empower and amplify the voices of traditionally minoritized and invisibilized communities while creating new frameworks for computational practice which are people-centered. So rather than being top down, Anthony considers from below, right, the implications of data and data science in communities. And then finally, my colleague Hugo Sarmiento, who critically examines the political economy of urban climate adaptation and its relationship to spatial injustices such as racial segregation and housing inequality. He draws on critical urban theory and political ecology to challenge the dominant paradigms and discursive practices associated with resilience theory. So rather than argue for what will make us more resilient, like lots of institutions do, what Hugo does is that he closely thinks about the structural and institutional conditions that lie behind politicians asking us to be resilient in the first place, which opens up much more progressive conversations vis-a-vis climate justice. And so his research agenda centers the social movements, the insurgent strategies, grassroots activism, all of which shape adaptation strategies and our understanding of climate justice, particularly in the country of Colombia, where he is writing, on which he's writing a book at the moment. So that's the five of us. So I introduced myself, and that's my four colleagues. We're hoping to add another colleague to that, but I can't say much more about that on the call. So hopefully you'll be six by the time that you get here. Right, the doctoral coursework which you have to do. So now I'm going to tell you a bit about how we structure the program across the 5 years through which you're enrolled. You do 48 credits maximum over the first 2 years, 12 per semester. One course generally at this level is 3 credits. These are the required courses which you have to take in the first 2 years of the program. These are mostly discussion groups. They're reading groups is how we like to think of them, right? So what happens is the students in the first and second year are given a lot of reading, a lot of exciting reading. They go away and each week we meet to discuss these readings and somebody will present the discussion and that leads to all kinds of fascinating and wonderful debates. These are the topics there for these colloquia. So research design and quantitative methods, that's Anthony Vanke who teaches that. Applied qualitative methods, that's me, as is also critical urban theory. Then we have Hiba with advanced planning theory, Ugo with advanced planning history. And then each student will also do something called an independent study, which is actually, that's starting to put together the readings that will then be the basis for the comprehensive exams at the end of during the second year. Sorry, the beginning of the third year. Sorry, I need more coffee today. The courses, there are also courses with research methods emphasis, which we ask students to take. And that doesn't have to be within GSAP, right? So you can pick courses from across the campus, but 2 of those, at least 2, should have some kind of research methods emphasis. We also advise students to take courses related to their research interests, obviously, and that's 3 or more courses during the first 2 years. There are also, in the master's program, there are core courses for our master's students. Here are some of them, and we actually advise these ones that if students have not done these as part of a master's degree before, in our doctoral program, we advise that they take these programs in the first or second year of the program. So History and Theory of Planning, GIS, and my course, Urban Political Economy. So that's the structure of the program over the first couple of years. In terms of the opportunities across Columbia, you may be thinking, well, what kinds of courses are available? Well, I could not summarize just how many there are. It's staggering, the range of courses available to students in our PhD program, right? So we have students who are doing courses in the arts and sciences part of the university, which could be anything from anthropology all the way through to sociology. We have courses in SEPA. We have courses in public health, the law school, social work. It's all here, right? And it's just impossible to summarize the breadth. All I'm doing on this slide is simply giving you a flavor as to just how broad it is, right? So students are always finding interesting things. And in fact, as I'm the person who has to approve students doing these courses in the first and second year, I'm often really jealous when I sign off on these. I'd like, wow, I'd like to take that course, you know? So it really is quite a remarkable thing to see just how much opportunity, how many opportunities there are for students to expand their intellectual horizons and study in different parts of the university, and then bring that into their own studies in the classrooms in urban planning that we run. Now, in terms of resources and support for students, so the students admitted to the program, right? So if you're successful, we offer a full scholarship for at least 5 years. Okay, sixth year funding is, well, hopefully none of you would need that, but sometimes it has been given to students for various reasons, which I won't go into. But what you do get is a full scholarship for at least 5 years. As part of fulfilling the conditions for that scholarship, you have to be a TA, or a teaching fellow, as it's called here. So in the second and third year of your PhD studies, you will be working as a TA on the master's program. And that actually is one of the things which, generally speaking, our PhD students find hugely helpful for their professional development, the experience of teaching, especially at a graduate level as well, not undergraduate level. But also the courses which are on offer mean that sometimes students are involved in, for example, urban planning studios that go to different countries, right? So the master's program in urban planning, there are studios that go to, like, I'm just thinking of last year, there was a studio that went to Santiago, Chile for 10 days. And one of the PhD students in the program went as a TA for that and had a fascinating time, right? As well as learn a lot, right? They were teaching, of course, but they were learning a lot too. There is also an annual summer stipend to assist with your research, especially in the form, and that helps often students who want to go to conferences. And we provide funding to attend at least one conference. And generally speaking, I find students go to about 2 or 3 over the course of their program, right? So, and these are fully funded. It's not just that we pay for the conference dues, it's also flight, hotel, etc. There are research workshops as part of your development here, and those are actually led by students. There's one next week, actually, where I think it's the third year students. They put together a 2-hour session where we're often discussing the ideas that one student wants to go through, or we're talking about, you know, preparing for various things like how to write a good job application for an academic position. There's all kinds of things which students organize themselves, which involve faculty, as well as all the students on the program. The Lectures in Planning series is actually intended originally for the master's program, but it's actually it's for the doctoral program too, and it's the second year doctoral students who are in charge of programming. So pretty much every other Tuesday throughout both semesters, engaging speakers come to Columbia University, they come to GSAP, and they talk to us for 2 hours about their work and answer your questions. And that is actually, for me, one of the highlights of what we do here. There's always somebody interesting every 2 weeks giving a lecture. And it's a chance for you as students to learn a lot. And those speakers always engage with the doctoral students after giving their talk to the master's students, to which anyone's invited from the PhD program as well. They do spend time afterwards with the PhD students answering questions. And I think that's a nice opportunity. About 2-3 years ago, I realized that we didn't really have a flagship event. So I got the permission of our dean to run an annual lecture series. So we have a real intellectual giant coming every year now, usually at the beginning of April, to give a school-wide lecture. So it's offered to the whole of GSAP, not just to the PhD program. Last year, we had the great Libby Porter from Melbourne, Australia, giving an incredible lecture about Indigenous movements and how it matters for urban planners to listen to them and their understandings of land in Australia, and how that has relevance well beyond Australia. And it was just a packed house and the most brilliant presentation. You can see it on YouTube if that's your thing. Another aspect of support that's a fairly recent development is GSAP's Language Fund. This is available to any student, in any PhD student in the school, not just in urban planning. And you can apply to learn a language, or you can apply to top up your existing knowledge of a language. And there are students who I'm finding in our program are really taking advantage of this great opportunity. So I've got one student, for example, who is from Tamil Nadu in India, who wants to, although that's one of her languages, she's not been there for a while and wants to improve it in order to communicate effectively for fieldwork. And so has enrolled in a kind of Tamil top-up course, right? So that is just one example of how students are accessing that language fund to pay for that tuition. Finally, some of us, it depends on success rates and depends on how busy we all are, but some of us have research grants. And if we have research grants, we tend to be on the lookout to hire people to help us with, for example, data analysis. And so there are those opportunities available from 5 of us if we are in that wonderful position of having research funding, which doesn't grow on trees, by the way, but I am aware of students. I don't have a grant at the moment. It just happens that you don't sometimes, but Anthony Vanke does, and he's already employed 2 of our PhD students, which gives you additional income, right? So these are the resources and support that are available as students here. So just to summarize the structure of the program, years 1 and 2 is probably the most time you will ever have to grow as an intellectual. You do so much reading. I'm always jealous of first and second year PhD students in any program. They have this wonderful block of time to just sit down and read, and oh my goodness, I would love that. So those of you listening to this call who end up in any program, whether it be ours or somewhere else, don't forget that the first and second years of that program is the best time you will ever have to read, and really just grow and just engage with all this fascinating stuff that you won't have time for the more you go into the academic world. Year 3 is when you pick your advisor. Now, we're a little different than many other programs in the United States. Most programs in urban planning, when you enroll, you are immediately matched to an advisor from the first day of your program, first day of your studies. Here we don't do that. Here, students select their advisor at the start of year 3, sometimes end of year 2, but usually the start of year 3. Why do we do that? Well, we feel it's really important for students not to feel tied to a specific individual, because if they're suddenly taking a course or suddenly exposed to a new idea which sends their work in a different direction, it would not be a good thing if they were tied to an advisor who could not help them through that. So we like to make sure that students really are clear as to what kind of research they want to do, and also to get to know us as faculty. So we don't allocate students to advisors straight out of the gate. You wait until the start of year 3, and it's always your choice. There's never any pressure to go with a particular advisor. It is your decision, and it's really important for all of us that it is your decision. Year 3 is when you do your comprehensive exams at the start of year 3, and then that leads to the defense of your prospectus in front of a small jury. Your prospectus is basically the research design for the work that you're going to do in years 4 and 5. Years 4 and 5 is when you do most of the bulk of your research, whether it be field work or statistical analysis, whatever the kind of work, methods you're doing, and that informs the writing of the dissertation. And the goal for most students is to produce and defend your PhD by the end of year 5. Most students accomplish that, not all, because life happens, right? So most people do get through this program in 5 years, but there's always exceptions, and we accommodate those if anything happens that delays you. In terms of the application and review process, so the deadline, I'm sure you've all seen on our website, is December the 11th of this year. We are asking you, as part of your application, to provide evidence of critical thinking and independent research. Critical thinking because that's the way we do things here, right? So you should be thinking, what is the role of urban planning to improve things, right? The status quo is unacceptable. I'd be surprised if anybody on this call thought that the world right now is an acceptable place in every way. So, what can urban planning do to make a difference? Right? That's the kind of thing we like. What kind of critical thinking are you interested in? Whose ideas have inspired you? So, think through those kinds of things. We also want you to give us some evidence of your writing ability, not just in the statements I'm about to mention, but also if you could send us a sample of your writing. Some people have sent us in the past extracts from their master's dissertations. Some people have even done publications in the past and will send us one of those, and that's fine, right? What we do ask, though, is that you don't send us too much to look at because we just don't have time to look at it, right? There was one year when somebody who was very entrepreneurial sent us about 8 journal articles on which were multi-authored studies that they'd been part of through their master's program, and that was frustrating, right? So just an indication, one indication of what kind of writer you are, and it just gives us a flavor as to what kind of scholar you are. The next two things, the statement of academic purpose. This is your chance to talk through the ideas that you're interested in, the themes, the topics that you're thinking of exploring. We're not asking you for a fully formed research design as if you're applying, for example, for research funding, right? That's not what we're interested in. We're interested in your broad topics of interest, the theoretical debates that you've engaged with so far and that you're excited to take forward in your work. It's also a chance for you to talk about the experience you have with analytical reasoning. And that is not limited to one particular methodology. If you're very broad across different methodologies so far, that's fine. We understand that sometimes people haven't made up their mind what kind of scholar they want to be, but we do expect to see what experience that you've had and how you might bring that to look at the topical and theoretical areas of interest that you want to cover. I'll answer questions on this, by the way, at the end. Finally, the personal statement. This is a chance, separate from the statement of academic purpose, this is a chance for you to tell us more about yourself. Think, what's my story? What can I tell these 5 people who are going to be reading my application about my journey so far? All of us are interesting people on this call. All of us have a story which has led to you being on this call, which has led to you applying to do a PhD in urban planning. Talk us through that story. What motivates you? Where do you see yourself? Where are you going? And this is a real chance for you to say, you know, like you might want to consider the kinds of things which I bring to this program. And believe me, the best personal statements are just a joy to read, right? So don't be shy, right? When you're talking through your just tell us about yourself and why, like who are you? How come you've ended up in this position of applying to do a PhD? And why is that the logical next step for you? That's the way to think of the personal statement. Finally, the review process. So what we do, we look at all these applications as a group of 5 faculty. So like I said, there's no matching to advisors at all. Students pick advisors at the start of year 3. So I would discourage you from spending all of your statement of academic purpose saying, oh, I want to work with Tom Slater, only interested in that. Do not say, it's fine for you to mention my work and say that, you know, you're keen to engage. But if you were to spend the whole of your statement of academic purpose mentioning only one person that you want to work with, then that shows you need to open your eyes and have a look at the work that we all do here, right? So so we review these applications collectively. You should be excited about joining us as a program, not just for a particular individual faculty member on the program. We then shortlist, and we shortlist generally about 12 people who are then invited to take part in an interview on Zoom. And that's around February. The dates are not fixed yet, but that's early February is the usual time. And following that process, we make offers to 3 students every year, okay? And then there's a wait list, and it depends how many of the people we interviewed we feel deserve a place on the wait list. Now, another thing is that all of you are probably applying to many different programs. Let's just say you get to the interview, and then following the interview, I was to write to you to say you're on the wait list. Sometimes that discourages people, but in the last 3 years, I think we've had candidates from the waitlist end up being offered admission because people are always shopping around and they're holding multiple offers and thinking, where do I want to go? They choose somewhere else, and then the next person on the waitlist is made an offer. So if you get that far, don't be discouraged if you're put on a waitlist. And I make that very clear when I make those waitlist offer positions. And that's around March, April. Now, my suggestions for the statement of academic purpose, because it's probably the most important thing. Personal statements, great, as are your writing samples and all that stuff, but the statement of academic purpose is the one to spend the most time on. That's my first suggestion. Spend the most time putting that together. So, why you? Why now? Why Columbia? Okay, now that should also be in the personal statement to an extent, but we need to see your fit for our program. So think through those questions as you're writing that statement, right? So you've got to think, how do I slot into the work that is done on that program? So have a look at the work myself and my 4 colleagues do and think, where do I fit in with that? Have a look at some of the topics that our PhD students are working on. You can see previous dissertations. There's a list of them on our website where you can look at past dissertations, past PhDs, and you could think, wow, okay, I think I could fit into that kind of intellectual culture. What are the broad research themes, contexts, and debates that interest you? Okay, it's quite amazing. Every year I read statements of academic purpose that don't include that, where you're not actually really sure what somebody's interested in. It does happen. So certainly you need to tell us what are the kinds of things you really would like to explore in more detail. I've underlined a word here because it's where people fall at the first hurdle every year. So applicants don't end up being shortlisted because they have not shown an interest in theory. Theories matter, right? It's important to have empirical interests, right? It's important to be interested in finding out about things that are actually happening. Fine. But if you have no interest in theory, then this is not the program for you. Okay, so you should be thinking, what are the theoretical debates which I have explored so far? And how do I see myself maybe taking these forward, drawing on them in the kinds of, to do the kind of research that I want to do? Okay, so do mention key authors, for example. Maybe there's an amazing book that you read, which has really sort of thought, I want to be that person when I grow up, or a similar version, right? Mention that, okay? So mention who is that scholar that's inspired you? What ideas really get you excited and want you to be part of this program? Why does the academic field of urban planning need you and your work? That's a question to ask yourself as you're writing this statement. Okay, you'll all have different reasons, but we love reading them. What have you done so far that is directly relevant? Where might you be heading? Okay, so there are certain times when I wonder why somebody's telling me something. I think a couple of years ago, somebody spent a very, very long time talking about how accomplished they were as a track and field athlete. Now, great, but not half of the statement of academic purpose. Okay, so by all, it's fine to have interests that are relevant, and we want to hear about those. And maybe track and field athletics could be relevant to urban planning. I'm sure it is in some way, but it wasn't clear from the statement of academic purpose. Okay. If you don't have an urban planning or an urban studies background, which might be the case for several of you on this call, then you need to explain why you're making that switch. So if you have a master's degree in economics, for example, if most of your training so far is in the field of architecture, great. You're by no means discouraged from applying, but you need to tell us why you want to make that leap into a different field, okay? And we don't expect you to totally abandon everything you've learned in the past, but it's like, well, what are those lessons that you could bring into urban planning, and why is it that you want to make that change? Okay, so very important for those of you who don't have an urban studies, urban planning background. Finally, and I'm just giving you this as an example of where people have tripped up in the past as making an application. It's utterly essential, all of you, to talk to your referees before they write letters for you. Why? There's nothing finer than when you read a statement of when you read an application and the various materials in it, and a referee supports that, right? They're often called letters of support. And if somebody has really talked to that referee and told them what motivates them and why this program is for them, that can make a letter so much more compelling, right? And it can often be a clinching factor for people being shortlisted. Okay, so an example of where it goes wrong, every year I read letters which are written by people who have applied for maybe several different programs in different fields, which you expect in urban studies because it's a broad suite of disciplines. But the referee has said, oh, I'm very pleased to support X's application to study urban design. Okay, now we're an urban planning program, we're not an urban design program. And then the letter is actually more about design than urban planning. Okay, so make sure that your letter writers write the letter that is specific to an urban planning PhD at Columbia. Okay, so I can't emphasize this enough. It's very frustrating sometimes when you read these letters where somebody's just not supporting the application, right? And sometimes you're thinking, why have they even written this letter? It's not even about somebody wanting to do urban planning. Okay, so do make sure you talk to your referees. And before I open it up for questions, there are some questions which Sarah received from you as part of the registration process. And I think Sarah's going to ask me a few of these now. And if there are any more questions, then I'm happy, and Sarah's happy to answer them too. So Sarah, is there a couple that you can pull out that have been asked, which maybe I've not covered so far?
Yes, yes. And I know that some of you are shy at the moment, and so we want to get you started with a couple of these questions while you're formulating some of your questions. So to start off with, let's see. In relation to the recommendation, this is a really good one. Is it acceptable to submit a letter of recommendation from a professional colleague? And what is your preference?
Okay. Yes is the excuse me. Yes is the answer to that question. But I think it's Sarah. It's 3 letters, isn't it? Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
3 letters of
Right.
recommendation.
Okay. If all 3 were from professional colleagues, that's a no-no. However, if you have 2 which are academic references and 1 from a professional colleague, often that can be more impressive than 3 academic letters, which all 3 may not be particularly, glowing and supportive, because academics write a lot of these letters and sometimes they don't write them very well. So sometimes we find that the very best letters are actually written by professional colleagues, and that can tell us so much about you. So I would actually encourage that, but certainly not all from professional colleagues, because we want to know about your academic track record and capabilities as well.
And I would like to add to that. So it is preferable that we receive at least 2 academic letters from you. But if there is a reason why you're unable to do that, please do let us know and we will guide you accordingly. But the preference is 2 academic letters.
Mm-hmm.
And if needed, then you can use your professional recommender. And the next question is it possible to have an advisor who is not on the list? Faculty.
No. Okay, so you can certainly have a committee member as you form your, for example, when you write your prospectus, which is during year 3, which you defend at the end of year 3, you can ask somebody else in GSAP, say one of my colleagues in architecture, for example, could be on your committee, and they could be on your dissertation defense committee at the end of year 5 as well. But the answer to that question is no, the advisors have to be from within the PhD program.
And the next question is, we can answer together. Is it possible for a student to apply to 2 different programs at GSAP separately? And technically, yes, but it is not recommended because the programs are very different. And so it kind of shows that you might not be ready for one or the other. So,
Yep.
and if you have any thoughts on that, Tom, please.
Yeah, so every year I read applications from people who are clearly more interested in architecture PhD than urban planning, and that's but they've applied for urban planning because they see it as a backdoor, which is just not going to happen. We see that straight away. So your applications should always be tailored towards exactly the program you're applying for. Okay, so don't waste your time. If you're only interested in architecture PhDs, do not waste your time applying to planning. vice versa, if like if you're only interested in urban planning, then don't apply for architecture. Okay, so you should really make sure your applications speak to exactly the program and the faculty and the work that you're interested in that specific field.
And the next question before we open up to the group, this is a really great one because many students are coming from urban planning backgrounds.
Yeah.
Can a past MS in urban planning from Columbia be used to reduce some necessary coursework?
Oh, sure. Right. So there's just the example I give. When I went through the structure of the program in the first and second year, you heard me talk about the fact that we recommend people take core courses in the master's program, for example, in GIS and urban political economy. Well, you've already done that if you've done a master's in urban planning here at Columbia. And also, if you've already done GIS as part of some other master's program, then that reduces you don't need to take GIS when you get here. Okay, we just recommend that you do to broaden your horizons. So it certainly can reduce the obligations that you might feel to do certain things that you've already done. If that helps answer your question.